The night over Khartoum was thick with smoke, and the artillery fire could be heard far away from the broken streets. Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, alias Hemedti, the most dangerous gang leader in Africa, who was in charge of Sudan's rapid support forces, had finally met his end. Blood was all over the floor, but there was no official word and no body was in sight. But sometimes, in Sudan's never-ending war, the truth can be found in the chaos. From the deserts of Darfur, Hemedti left his mark on the world by leading the RSF during a reign of terror across Sudan. His forces destroyed villages, put down rebellions, and fought for power in a country that was on the verge of war. No one knows what exactly happened to him. Hurt, or patiently waiting to unleash his next attack, his fate is shrouded in mystery. In a country where power shifts all the time, one thing is certain. Hemedti was a menace in Sudan whose havoc is still felt today. Born in the middle of the 1970s, he came from the Maharia branch of the Ritsegat Arab tribe. As a young man, he began his simple life by selling camels across Sudan's dry borders in Chad and Libya. He quit school at a young age and relied on his determination and ties to his tribe to stay alive. In 2003, the non-Arab rebel groups, like the Sudan Liberation Movement, claimed the government was ignoring them, which led to the start of the Darfur conflict. The then military ruler Omar al-Bashir replied fiercely, arming the Janjaweed, an Arab militia, to put down the revolt. Hemedti, who was a small tribal leader then, saw a chance to gain more influence and control. He got his group together and joined the Janjaweed campaign. People died, villages were burned down, and the UN later estimated that the conflict killed 300,000 people. In the end, he said he was just one of many, but Hemedti's name came up in the chaos. By 2013, Bashir had turned the Janjaweed into the Paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, with the help of Hemedti. He was a lieutenant general and reported directly to the president. What began as a gamble by a trader in the desert turned into a base for a warlord. Power was no longer far away. He could now reach it. To be powerful, you need money. Hemedti found his in Darfur's gold. In 2017, he caught a rival Janjaweed leader named Musa Hilal and took the mines on Jebel Amr. Hemedti got into Sudan's gold trade through Al Junaid, a business run by his brother Abdul Rahim. The gold trade makes up 40% of Sudan's exports and is worth over $1 billion a year, according to some estimates. Dubai got shipments that filled up RSF's coffers. Satellite pictures from 2018 showed that mining activities were growing in areas that he controlled, even though villages in Darfur were in terrible shape. The cash bought trucks and was also used to entice people to support the revolution. Security experts suggest that the RSF had 100,000 fighters by 2023, which was a lot more than the Sudan's official army currently has. Hemedti also made deals in other countries. For example, RSF soldiers who fought in Yemen for Saudi Arabia and the UAE recruited millions more of armed men. He was also said to be connected to Russia's Wagner Group, which traded gold for military aid during the conflict in Ukraine. So he went from being in charge of a tribal militia to being one of the most powerful men in Sudan by getting gold and allies from other countries. Power, on the other hand, had costs. From 2014 to 2015, Human Rights Watch saw a lot of killings and destruction of whole communities in Darfur. They also saw attacks by the RSF. Survivors told stories of how towns were destroyed, men were killed, and women were abused. Hemedti said that bad units did bad things without his knowledge, so he denied ordering these crimes, but more and more evidence pointed to the contrary. Even after he changed its name to a national security force, the RSF still had a scary reputation. Now, gold and blood were his money. They helped him rise and destroyed everything in his way. From the gold markets of Dubai to the desert of Darfur, Hemedti had a tighter grip on Sudan until war came right to his door. Hemedti's goals were bigger than Bashir's shadow. In April 2019, there were huge protests in Sudan's streets calling for the dictator to step down. Meanwhile, Hemedti stepped into action. He and Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the head of the army, planned the coup that got rid of Bashir after 30 years in power. When the Transitional Military Council took over, Hemedti was deputy head. After a few weeks, on June 3rd, RSF fighters attacked a protest camp in Khartoum. Witnesses say that more than 100 people were killed by being shot, beaten, or dumped in the Nile. Hemedti said he had nothing to do with the crime, but UN investigators found a link between the RSF and it. In August, a civilian military sovereignty council was created to balance the power of the military with the influence of the civilians. Hemedti walked in, sending out reform. After making peace with rebels from Darfur and Juba, he signed a document promising stability in 2020. Still, the gap between him and Burhan grew bigger. The army asked the RSF to explain its independence. Hemedti had a lot of money, his own army, and good relationships with other countries that made military control difficult. Tensions were building up beneath it all. When they struck again in October 2021, they started a second revolution that was meant to undo the transition led by civilians. Democratic hopes for Sudan fell apart. Protests broke out, but Hemedti and Burhan clamped down. They ruled together until they didn't. Their coalition brokered a scheme to combine the RSF into the army by April 2023. Hemedti turned down, interpreting it as a grab of power. War started to break out. The skyline of Khartoum lit with tracer fire. Once chaotic but functional, Sudan's capital turned into a battlefield. The war of 2023 unleashed the full might of the RSF. Targeting non-Arab groups like the Masalit, they revived early 2000s ethnic slaughter in Darfur. Based on local reports, a November 2023 attack in West Darfur claimed over 1,000 lives as RSF fighters destroyed houses and executed citizens. People who lived through it said that men were shot in the streets, women were taken from their homes, and whole families disappeared overnight. Following Wad Madani's capture in December, RSF soldiers looted markets and attacked Gezira state residents. Médecins Sans Frontières said of hundreds of Hemedti said these actions were illegal and blamed rebel groups, but UN officials saw a pattern. Massacres happened everywhere the RSF went. The war's toll grew. Early 2025 saw the UN estimate that 10 million people were displaced and over 20,000 clashing with Burhan's army in a merciless standstill. The RSF held western Sudan and areas of Khartoum. While both sides battled for supplies, Hemedti's army changed with the times. Though Abu Dhabi denies it, they used drones and anti-aircraft weapons, hardware linked to UAE shipments. The cruelty of Hemedti attracted worldwide criticism. RSF commanders were sanctioned by the United States. The ICC gave war crimes allegations some thought, but power in Sudan spoke louder than law. Still under territory, his gold empire drove the war. From a camel trader to a dreaded warlord, Hemedti had resisted every effort to stop him. In Sudan, however, power is short-lived. Allies turn, fortunes change, and the hunter becomes hunted. Now, with whispers of his death floating around, one wonders, has Hemedti at last faced his due? Hemedti pursued legitimacy outside of Sudan's boundaries. He visited East Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda in late 2023 and early 2024, meeting officials, strengthening political ties, and trying to present himself as more than just a warlord. He signed a ceasefire with Abdallah Hamdok, a civilian in Addis Ababa. This was thought to be a diplomatic move. The truce didn't last long. Fighting started up again after a few weeks. Burhan laughed it off and said that other countries were helping a war criminal. The accusations were not completely false. The UAE was looked into because it was said to be arming the RSF, which was backed up by evidence that the RSF had foreign weapons. As more weapons were sent to Sudan, the war got worse instead of better. In October 2024, Hemedti made things worse by saying that Egypt had attacked RSF sites, which suggested a bigger conflict in the region. He had fewer allies, and his speech became more direct. Things were shifting. By late 2024, Burhan's troops had seized control back. They surrounded the RSF, got back some Sanar, and pushed through Khartoum's streets, which were full of broken glass. As always, Hemedti's speech in October predicted a war that would last for years, but he was running out of time. He died in March 2025. After months of fierce fighting, an airstrike was put on an RSF stronghold outside of Khartoum. The blast tore through the compound, leaving behind very little. Hemedti was one of the casualties. He was once the feared leader of the RSF. His brother Abdul Rahim was hurt during the attack, but he lived. After hours of checking to make sure he was dead, the Sudanese army released a statement calling him the warlord who terrorized Sudan. Different parts of the country had different reactions. People celebrated in areas controlled by the army, seeing his as the beginning of the end for the RSF. In areas held by the RSF, fighters swore revenge, but their leader was already Without Hemedti, the RSF didn't have a clear future. When he there was a power void that his brother Abdul Rahim tried to fill, but ranks start to show flaws without Hemedti's harsh leadership and well-thought-out alliances. As commanders fought for power, fighting broke out within the RSF. and the group's control over its lands became less strong. It took violence, gold, and betrayal for Hemedti to rise from a camel trader to a warlord. He led a group that changed Sudan by killing many people, committing war crimes, and being violent without being stopped. From the genocide in Darfur to the streets of Khartoum, he planned and gathered money and power. Sudan's pain did not end when he died. The army and the remaining RSF were still fighting over who had the most power, so the war went on. But the man who ruled out of fear was no longer there, at least physically. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.